Right, Dave, you said you weren't there with GG and Betfair, but you're a good sport 'cause you said you'd like to talk about this as well. You used to work for Odds Checker, but you don't anymore.
Yeah.
What went horribly wrong there?
Well, essentially it was a troll. Basically, a troll had screenshotted something I had said on Twitter. I think I said something along the lines. I can't be sure what it was. I said something along the lines of, I don't think it's fair to compare my profit and loss to the likes of Andy Holdings when I've only put up one tip a day, and Andy is putting up multiple tips, for example. I just thought it was more difficult to make profit on one horse a day than anything else. And the guy had been berating me on Twitter, and it was simply just a reply for him to go away. Give him an explanation and go away. Essentially, he screenshots that, he sends it in, I think, to Odds Checker. I can only tell you my end of the story. I don't know what happened therein. And then I get a phone call saying that, we've had complaints in the office and stuff that he's saying that you can't make profit and all this sort of stuff, which is obviously not true. But yeah, ultimately that it was time to let me go, and they said with an option of coming back in October. Obviously, I wasn't going to come back in October. If you're not going to kind of have my back, then but that just goes to show the power that some of these trolls have got. So there's a lot of the times where I will probably put up, gutted that didn't win, and people will say, keep your chin up, mate, you're doing well, keep your chin up, and that's fantastic and lovely to hear. But I'm not looking for reassurance when I do that. All I'm simply doing is acknowledging the losses, because I think it's important. I think like I said before, I think you've got a moral obligation to people, and I think it's important that you acknowledge losses. When you're someone like me, for example, and you work as hard as you possibly can to get into an industry that you've never had any affiliation with, you've never had any contacts in, you've never asked anybody for any handouts or help up the ladder, and you know that you've put everything into that, you become very protective of your position and who you work for. That's why every time I work for anybody, I will give 110%. I will go above and beyond. I don't know if you've read any of the Betfair Cheltenham Festival focuses, for example. They're very in-depth detail stuff, but that's because I want to put 110% into it, because I know that I've sort of worked and come from nothing really, and I don't want to say it as a popular surname or anything like that, but that's the be all and end of it. I don't have an in, as a lot of other people may have an in, so I have to work harder than everybody else. Well, that's how I feel. So you become very protective over your position. So I think acknowledging losses sometimes can keep the trolls off your back, other times clearly not. But I just feel so protective of the position I'm in because of how hard I've had to work, and I don't think they deserve the power that they have, even if they don't know that they've got it.
Now, there's something interesting that you said on Twitter the other day. It was quite interesting because you are a professional tipster, but you said that you don't have much time for pro punters that just back leads and other people's marks. Now, I know that you're not tipping to pro punters, I suppose, but you are still tipping the people that want to follow somebody else's advice. So why do you think that?
I just think that there are some that put hours and hours and hours of work into it and go about their business very quietly. And I think there are some others that take what someone's done, the hours and hours of work that someone's done, and then go around and start shouting that they're the professional punter. When really, what are they without that person that's done the hours and hours of work? I think it's very important in any walk of life, in anything you do, even if you're going to go get your driving test or it, to be self-sustainable and rely on you and no one else. Because ultimately, your edge is somebody else. And if that person's gone, then you've lost your edge. So that would be my... And that's not targeted at anybody. I know you're thinking it is. It's not, because I actually very much enjoyed his interview, and I think he's a fascinating character.
Now, we're talking about trolls. Not that he's a troll, but we're talking about trolls. Now, they thought they buggered your career right up, but now you're working for Betfair and you're working for GG.com. So you've actually progressed, and now you've got jobs that you told to me that you're like your dream jobs. Yeah. So tell us a bit about what you do. Sell yourself. Shameless self-promotion, as the head of Star Sports would say. We love it.
What do I do? I don't know what to do. I ultimately provide tips. I provide a Cheltenham focus column where every single week we...
But one's Betfair and one's GG, so you work for two different...
Yes, of course, yeah. Sorry. Cheltenham Festival Focus is for Betfair. We provide that every single week on the lead up to a festival, adding an anti-post betting every single week. We also look back at the previous week's action, slate some horses, give a big up to some horses that have done well, go into depth with time figures, form analysis and stuff like that, and really try and get a clearer picture of the Cheltenham Festival as we get closer and closer. So we'll, at the end of Cheltenham, we'll have a look at that and see how we've got on over the period of the time. For GG is a daily tipping column, so every single day, the evening before that goes up, because people need to understand that our job is not just about tipping, it's about driving traffic to the website as well. So that will go up the evening before race day, and there'll be a detailed explanation on a selection in there.
Tricky. I mean, that must be quite tricky. You've got to sort of keep your eye on weather forecasts and stuff like that. Is that the extra? You become a meteorologist as well.
What's that for?
Well, if you're tipping the night before, do you have to sort of have that in mind? What the condition is going to be like the next day?
Yeah, absolutely. I tell you, it's more frustrating about the prices sometimes. I mean, it works both ways. Don't get me wrong, it does work both ways. But for example, the 4-point tip that I put up the other day that blew out. I knew that was going to drift. I just knew it was going to drift, but my column goes out in the evening, so it's going to go out at that price. Yeah. Unfortunately, I think it was 13 to 8. It's gone out at 9.4. So, and I knew it was going to drift because that wasn't the correct price when it was priced up. But that's what I'm saying when they're two different beasts.
Yeah. No, we sort of said you appear to wear your heart on your sleeve. I've only met you a few times, but you seem quite. You're quite not emotional, but you say it as it is, and you also say it how it is on social media. Do you sometimes think you wish you'd chosen a bit of a less pressured job than what because you've put yourself in quite a pressurised position, haven't you?
Yeah, no, not really, because I'm very, very passionate about it, and I think if you can find something that you're extremely passionate about, I think you can live with the pressure. I understand what you're saying. Sometimes I do wear my heart on the sleeve on Twitter, but I'm not looking for reassurance, and I'd hope people wouldn't mistake that for me not being confident in myself, because I very much am.
And we've mentioned that you say you'd like to be sort of self-sustaining as a punter. So is that an ambition that you're actively working towards every day? And if so, what are you doing to try and get to that point? And do you think you'd ever want to... Well, you answer that first, and then I've got another one.
Yeah, that's definitely, because again, like I was saying before, I think you need to be able to sustain yourself, look after yourself essentially. And if I can do that through punting and use these 3 years for the the fine tuning process, etc., then that's what I'm going to do. But that doesn't mean I don't want to be a tipster or I'm going to give that up. I definitely want to continue to doing that. But worst case scenario, someone screenshots something and all of a sudden you don't work for anybody. You need to be able to look another step ahead to be able to look after yourself and your family and your house, and that's the way it will go. If that, God forbid, that scenario ever happens. But yeah.
So do you sort of look on the work that you do and then publish on your various columns, the homework that you would have done anyway for your punting, with just a little bit of flair added to it before you put it up there? Is that how you look at it?
Yeah, pretty much. And the punting, like I say, the punting side of it is so I bet a little bit in running, do a few other different bits and pieces. So the punting side of it is separate almost, even though I'm still backing the horses that I am tipping, because I think that you have to do that as a tipster. Otherwise you've got no leg to stand on, have you? You can't tell someone to go back this horse if you ain't willing to back it yourself. So I think that's another thing that annoys me. But yeah, they're two different things, so you can work on two separately, but you should always be very true to what you're doing on both sides. And
would you back yours the night before, which would possibly start a price tumble, or do you sort of hang fire?
No, I hang fire. I have to hang fire, unfortunately. There are a couple of ways of getting on the night before if it's something that I have to and I know it's gonna go. And I'm not talking about a rick. I'm talking about a genuine chance that's gonna go. So there are a couple of ways of doing that. But I mean, it's like accounts are like putting a plaster over a wound, for a better word, aren't they? It's inevitably gonna.
So what you've got everywhere, obviously through determination, from what I can gather from this interview. But what would you say the secret of your continued success in what you do is?
It's hard work. It's being polite and honest to everybody you meet and everybody you see. Everybody you meet, you don't know who that person is. You don't know what things are going to lead to. You've got to be polite to everybody you meet, but you've got to work extremely hard. This is harder work mentally on the brain than scaffolding is, you know, and you have to work hard. There is no replacement for it. And that, I suppose that links back to the point about the mark your card guys, but like that does frustrate me because I know how much hard work goes into it.
Yeah, but cultivating those contacts is hard work as well, isn't
It is, exactly.
And getting the money
and don't get me wrong, there are different angles, and I suppose maybe if I was on the other side of the fence, then I'd feel completely different. But I'm not, and that's not through the fault of anybody else. But it just.
But just as an argument, so if one of these guys said to you, "Look, Daryl, I can get you as much as you like on in return for your bets before in return for your personal bets, not your tipping bets or whatever." I mean, would you be interested in collaborating?
Well, that's a different angle. That's a different conversation. That's a different interview.
I've just dropped that one on you. So we've got to keep these things organic. So the final question: where would you like to be in 10 years' time if you could make it happen? Which I don't doubt that you won't. Where would you be?
In all honesty, I think just to have the respect of your peers in the game, in the world of horse racing, I guess would be gratitude enough, really, for me, and to be still doing what I love doing every single day of the week. There's nothing more better to do what you love. So, but I think respect from your peers. I mean, there's guys that I admire greatly, like the Dixon boys. Admire them greatly. I'd love to go and do a little bit for racing TV down the line, maybe something like that. But ultimately, just the respect of your peers and to be acknowledged as being in horse racing.
Brilliant. Well, Daryl Carter, thank you very much.
Cheers, mate.